Today in Draw My Life, the end of Disney. Currently one of the largest companies. I mean, it's only a matter of time before we will all be owned by Disney, you know? And especially the ones responsible for the world's best-known stories. However, there are plenty of hidden stories that will completely change your mind about Disney. Today we bring you the 3 most disturbing ones. Stay until the end to see which one scared you the most.
You should have gone for the head.
Muska Mickey Mouse! Well, today we're going to be serious. Can you remember the most famous and sweet mouse of Disney? Yes, sure, we're talking about Mickey Mouse. Forget about that. There is a myth about his death in a videotape that kills everyone who watches it. This story that went viral on the internet says that Leonard Maltin, a Disney producer, found the cartoon while he was sifting through all Mickey Mouse cartoons to decide which ones would be used for a DVD compilation. He found an unpublished Mickey Mouse tape. It was one of the first Mickey cartoons ever made around the 30s, and it was called Suicide Mouse. Maltin decided to watch the video, but the screen went black and he thought the video was over. Anyway, he decided to digitalize it because it was a Disney video. When he did it, he realized the video was longer than he thought, and after the black screen, Mickey appeared again. In the video we can see a very forlorn Mickey walking down the street. The creepy music in the background sends shivers down your spine. Suddenly the image starts to fade, and the screen goes black again. After 6 minutes we can see Mickey again, but everything looks a little bit different. We can see distorted images and hear messy and horrible screams in the background. Maltin was so upset that he left the room and had an assistant finish watching so he could take notes for him and lock it away. It is said that the assistant stumbled out of the room after finishing the video and said, "Real suffering is not known," 7 times. Then he grabbed the guard's gun and killed himself. However, this mystery goes beyond that. At the end of the video, we can see Mickey's face. He's smiling. The frame contains a Russian sentence that roughly translates to, "The sights of hell bring its viewers back in." Does this mean that Disney viewers should be psychopaths? Disney workers mustn't show the video that is locked away. Nevertheless, there are several videos on YouTube about this suicide story, but where's the real video that was found in the Disney studios? It is said that all the videos we can find on the internet are made out of the story Maltin told, and that's why the last 2 minutes are missing. It is well known that Walt Disney has always been related to the government, and it is said that the suicide video had something to do with them. The CIA was involved in the video. It was an experiment associated to the MK Ultra. The project consisted in an experiment based on mind control after a trauma caused by the video. There are also comics that show Mickey Mouse's suicide attempts. Not a single one turns out well. This comic was written by Floyd Gottfredson, who had nothing to do with Disney. The company censored this comic for a long time. But Mickey's suicide is not the only suicide animation that we can find on the internet. There's also a video about Squidward's suicide. Yes, SpongeBob's neighbor. After a clarinet concert, everyone starts booing him. Later we can see him crying at home, and he decides to kill himself. The Disney world has always been surrounded by weird stories and myths. The most popular myth is about Walt Disney being frozen and waiting to be awakened several years later. And we ask ourselves, will Walt Disney wake up one day to tell us his experience? Probably he will be amazed with all the stories surrounding him.
In the darkest corners of the internet lies the gory story of one of Disney's most beloved characters. And no, we're not talking about Mickey Mouse, but of Donald Duck. So if you want to know what drove the silly duck to madness, subscribe and hit the little bell. If you dare. It was an ordinary afternoon. My friends and I got together to have some fun before heading home. We started playing in the park, but soon got bored. Not knowing what to do, Julio suggested sharing scary stories as it was becoming dark. Excited, but a little scared, we all agreed. Julio told his story, but no one got scared. Then did Paula, Juan, and Maria, but none of them shocked us as we thought they would. Tired and not knowing what else to do, we headed home. When I got home, I got a notification on my cell phone. It was a message from Julio in our group chat. "Now this will scare you to death," he said. I proceeded to open the message, and there was a link to a video called Donald Duck's Suicide. When I saw the title, I hesitated a little to open it, but I did it anyway. The video began with a title card that said, "Walt Disney Presents Donald's Suicide," and the date, 1928. The sound was a little distorted, but even so, the dialogue was quite clear. Donald's high-pitched, quavering voice began to ring out, "You'll never forget this, folks." He sounded like he was crying. The image quickly jumped to a nice neighborhood. Donald was walking cheerfully down the sidewalk until he ran into Daisy and a muscular duck kissing her. as she was leaving her house. Furious, Donald picked up his pace so he wouldn't be seen. He couldn't believe Daisy was cheating on him with someone else. The next few days, Donald didn't sleep once, and his appearance deteriorated drastically. "I've got to get rid of him," he said. Determined, Donald grabbed a knife and a garbage bag and made his way to the muscular duck's house. He broke his window, went into his bedroom, and killed him. He took his body, put it in a bag, and buried it in a deep well. Suddenly, the video abruptly jumped to another scene. It was 7 years later, and Donald was leaving prison. Quickly, he rushed to Daisy's house, to whom he confessed the murder in detail. Horrified, Daisy asked Donald to leave and never contact her ever again. So Donald, bursting with rage, beat her, knocked her unconscious, and tied her up with a rope. Slowly waking up, Daisy began to scream when she saw herself on the train tracks. Hearing the whistle of the approaching train, Donald stared at Daisy, who was begging for her life, and said, "I'm sorry." He then threw himself with her just 2 seconds before the train passed. The screen faded to black, and a pool of blood flooded the image. A carousel of photos began to pass with dead people on the tracks. Horrified, I turned off my cell phone and left it in my room. What the hell had Julio sent? When I came back, I heard the same high-pitched, trembling voice from the beginning saying,
"Don't turn off the cell phone, Lucia. You can't get rid of me. You've already summoned me. I'm waiting for you in hell."
Not knowing what to do, I drowned my phone in a glass of water, but the voice kept ringing. Since that day, I haven't eaten, I haven't slept, I smell terrible, and there are voices talking inside of my head. Somebody help me, please. I can't take it anymore. I have to end this. I think there's a station nearby. A long time ago, when magic didn't exist, in a village in Denmark, a child named Olaf was born. It was no easy labor. The child went without oxygen for a few seconds, and that affected his later development. Olaf was the youngest of 8 siblings, but he was very loved by his family. In the village, winter lasted 9 months, so they longed for the arrival of spring. However, that year, the flowers were not going to bloom again. One afternoon on Friday, a woman came to the village selling animal skins to protect them from the cold. She was a very nice lady, going from village to village and living under the roof of the villagers. This time, it was Olaf's parents who invited her to spend the night in the humble abode. In gratitude, the woman told the story of the Snow Queen to the children before they went to bed. The children were delighted and fell asleep, thinking how brave the main characters were and how wicked the Snow Queen was. And as if the Snow Queen herself had passed by the house, the next day, tragedy reigned in their home. One of their children, the fourth, had been drowned, and little Olaf's bed was empty. The kind woman had vanished like a snowflake. She had left a trail of bloodstains. Olaf's parents and their neighbors wanted to follow her, but the snow had soon covered the traces. The woman, named Elsa, had stolen a reindeer and a sled. She drove it with a big smile, while on the side, Olaf huddled, bleeding to death. He had never felt so much pain in his life. Would this be his end? However, this was nothing compared to what was to come. Between the cold and the head wounds, Olaf was numb, unconscious. Later, Olaf woke up in an ice cave. His whole body hurt. When he wanted to move, he couldn't. Olaf was entirely stiff. He couldn't feel his feet. But the worst part came when he looked at his little hands. He was missing a finger, and the rest were completely purple. At that moment, footsteps approached. Olaf looked up and saw that Elsa was wearing some kind of ice crown on her head. She began to speak. "Welcome to my museum," she pointed around him. There, Olaf looked around for the first time and saw thousands of frozen children's figures all around him. Apart from the stalicities hanging from the ceiling, there were frozen limbs and fingers. Olaf wanted to scream, but all that came out of his mouth was mist. When Elsa saw him, she burst out in laughter. She began to explain that she's been working for years in her entourage to become the real Snow Queen. Olaf did not understand anything, but was terrified. Shivering, he said, "I'm so cold." Elsa looked at him with contempt. He sighed and left the room. After a while, she returned with a pot of hot water. However, she poured it over Olaf, not only melting some of the ice that was holding him, but also making him scream in pain due to the shock of extreme temperature. The little boy began to smoke through his skin. and then that smoke turned into bleeding sores. She rebuked him by ordering him to stop crying. He was screaming for his mother. Elsa told him not to worry about his family because she was going to send them a little gift so he would never forget the little boy. At that moment, she took out a pair of scissors, brought them close to his nose, and slowly cut the cartilage. Blood began to flow out, and Olaf fainted. After a while, Olaf woke up. His head hurt all over. As best he could, he brought his icy hands up to his nose, only to find that his nose had been exchanged for a carrot? Good morning, baby doll. I've decided I'm not going to turn you into an ice figure. I'm going to make a snowman out of you. Don't look at me like that, little guy. There's nothing better than being a snowman. Everyone wants to play with you. Well, until spring comes. But shh, I won't let anything happen to you. Well, enough of that. You know what's coming now, don't you? Olaf tried to move to escape from his cruel fate, but he couldn't. Elsa grabbed some ice felicities, brought them close to his arms, and began stabbing him, first tearing his skin and then piercing his bone. Blood spattered on his face. Olaf died instantly, but his soul got transferred to the snowman, which effectively never melted due to the caring of Elsa, the bloody Ice Queen. She continued kidnapping children and was never caught. Years after her death, some hikers had to take shelter from a blizzard, enter the cave, and discover all the frozen bodies.
So, which one do you think was the scariest? Have you heard these stories before? Leave it in the comments and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.